Mangwanani Malelepo Vukenjani Kwasvanawe Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. Today we have so much that you can expect. We'll be talking to Mike Sichula, who's going to be giving us an update on what's happening in Zambia. And of course, Adi is going to be talking to us about the stories in South Africa. Apparently, the government is considering, if the Ukraine and Russia conflict continues, rationalizing fuel consumption. You know, you might only be limited to a certain amount of fuel. And yesterday, Namibia had its most recent COVID-19 update, and we'll be breaking it down with Danny Boyson, who is the editor of the Afrikaans Daily Republican. This is Africa Good Morning, Wednesday, 16 March. You're joined by Ashwin Berry and Glenora Shipura.
Now, I'm particularly excited about today. Today is No Selfies Day. That means no selfies for you, Ashwin.
Think about it.
Now, the plague that is selfies, and they are by far the most popular thing to come out of the accessibility of self-photography. Now, thankfully, there's a day dedicated to breaking free of this addiction, and it's No Selfies Day. For one day, you can finally stop participating in the much addictive urge to take a selfie. So, Ashwin, no selfie.
Is this still a selfie if I just put a timer?
Yes, it still is.
Oh, okay.
Let's have a look at this video on No Selfies Day.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. These are the stories making today's headlines. We start off in Kenya. 98-year-old primary school student Priscilla Sitine becomes a role model. 98-year-old Priscilla Sitine, also known as Gogo, is enrolled at Leaders Vision Preparatory School in the Kenyan town of Eldoret. Like her younger classmates, she dresses in full uniform, and at assembly, she's as enthusiastic a participant, singing alongside pupils young enough to be her great-grandchildren. After the Kenyan government agreed to subsidize primary education costs back in 2003, senior citizens like Priscilla, who never had the chance to go before, were able to attend school. She's now in 6th grade, where her favorite subjects are science, Christian religious studies, and mathematics. The 98-year-old is something of an inspiration, encouraging those who have dropped out of school to go back. Now, her grandson, Protas Kemboi, says he's very proud of her. Priscilla has embraced every aspect of primary school, even physical education classes, and says she does not intend to stop learning anytime soon.
Truly inspiring story. Now, in our next story, former Boko Haram militants to be reintegrated into society. Now, 559 ex-Boko Haram members have graduated from a de-radicalization program and are expected to be reintegrated into society soon, Nigerian authorities have said. Now, the graduation ceremony was held over the weekend at a de-radicalization center in the northeastern state of Gombe. Now, the graduates pledged their allegiance to the Nigerian authorities they once fought against. The military-run initiative was introduced in 2015 by the Nigerian government and became operational in 2016 as part of its counter-terrorism strategies. Now, members of Boko Haram who voluntarily laid down their arms and surrendered to to their authorities are given special training, including vocational skills, religious reorientation, and psychological support to radicalize them before being reintegrated into society. So far, a total of 1,629 ex-Boko Haram members have completed the program. There are still doubts in the society towards former Boko Haram members given the level of violence the group has committed.
Now, in our next story, ICC says Central African Republic war crimes suspect surrendered. The International Criminal Court has said the former Central African Republic's militia leader, Maxime Geoffrey Eli Mokom Gawaka, had been surrendered to the court by the authorities of Chad for crimes against humanity and war crimes. Mokom, a national coordinator of the so-called anti-Balaka militias, is accused of crimes against the Muslim civilian population in the Central African Republic, including murder, torture, extermination, and the use of child soldiers. The ICC in 2018 issued an arrest warrant for Mokom, as it said there were reasonable grounds to believe he was responsible as coordinator of anti-Balaka militias for crimes committed against Muslim civilians. Two other anti-Balaka leaders are already on trial at the court in The Hague, while one Seleka leader is in custody awaiting trial. Central African Republic has been mired in violence since a coalition of mostly northern and predominantly Muslim rebels known as Seleka or Alliance in the Sango language seized power in March 2013.
Now, in our next story, 13 soldiers killed in an ambush in Burkina Faso. Now, at least 13 Burkina Faso soldiers were killed and several others went missing on Sunday in an ambush near Taparko, a mining town in the northern part of the country plagued by frequent and deadly jihadist attacks. Now, the soldiers were on their way to an inspection and security mission on the Taparko-Taugari axis, where earlier in the morning, 2 people were killed by the explosion of an improvised explosive device as a transport bus passed by. Now, there has been an increase in attacks with improvised explosive devices coupled with ambushes since 2018 that have claimed the lives of nearly 300 civilians and military personnel. Now, the military junta led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Dambi has made the fight against jihadism and rebuilding of Burkina Faso state his priority. Now, Damib has been in power following a military coup that toppled President Roch Marc Christina Kobore and placed him under house arrest for failing to stem jihadist violence.
In our next story, Somalia's worst drought in 4 decades means millions need aid. The Horn of Africa region is facing the driest conditions in more than 4 decades after 3 consecutive rainy seasons failed, according to the United Nations World Food Programme. More than 4 million Somalis will struggle to find food if the rains don't come in April, WFP said. Somalia has experienced a series of catastrophic droughts in the last decade. Global weather patterns indicate that the rains are likely to fail again this year, according to the Famine Early Warning System Network, which has warned that the region could experience its worst drought on record. If this year's rains do not materialize, 1.4 million children under 5 will be acutely malnourished by the end of the year, a WFP spokesperson said. Earlier this month, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said heat waves, droughts, and extreme rainfall would become more frequent in coming decades as temperatures continue to climb. All right, that brings us to the end of the first half of our top stories. More news after the break. Welcome back to Africa Good Morning, and thank you for staying with us. Now, in our next story, Kenya's deputy president, estranged from his boss, aims for presidency.
Now, Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto is due to be nominated on Tuesday by his new party to stand for the presidency in August election after his public split with President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is backing another candidate. Now, Ruto will compete with veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga, who has secured Kenyatta's support. Now, Kenyatta, who must stand down after serving the maximum of 2 5-year terms, says Ruto is not trustworthy and less experienced than Odinga. Now, some Kenyans are concerned about the divisions because elections have sometimes sparked violence, notably in 2007 when Odinga's supporters said his victory was stolen and a crackdown on political protests degenerated into clashes between ethnic groups. Now, Ruto, standing with the newly created United Democratic Alliance, has sought to calm those fears. Now, elections in the East African nation are closely watched. Kenya is the region's richest and most stable nation and a close Western ally that hosts regional headquarters of international firms.
In our next story, households in North Africa panic buying as food prices rise. Households across North Africa are rushing to stock up on flour, semolina, and other staples as food prices rise following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, both key wheat exporters to the region. Tunisia, Morocco, and Libya, along with several other Arab countries, import much of their wheat from Ukraine and Russia. Some fear the Russian invasion could lead to hunger and unrest, with memories of how rising food prices played a role in several Arab uprisings last decade. In one supermarket in the Tunisian capital, the shelves were bare of flour or semolina, and only 3 packs of sugar sat on the shelf near a sign that read 1 kilo per customer, please. Store managers said the problem was panic buying, not shortages. Hedi Bakor of Tunisia's Union of Supermarket Owners said daily sales of semolina, a staple across North Africa, have jumped by 700% in recent days. Sugar sales are up threefold as Tunisians stockpile basic foodstuffs.
Now, in our next story, suicides by women in Japan for a second year. Now, the number of women who died by suicide in Japan rose for a second straight year in 2021, although the overall number of people who took their own lives in the country edged down, police said on Tuesday. Now, suicide rates in Japan had long topped the group of 7 nations, but a concerted national effort brought numbers down by roughly 40% over 15 years. Although they rose in 2020 due to stresses brought on by the coronavirus pandemic, the health minister said. Now, while the overall number of suicides edged down by 74 to 21 from the year before, the number of women who took their own lives rose by 42 to 7,068, the second straight year of increase, according to data from the National Police Agency. Now, officials have previously said the coronavirus pandemic placed extra stress on women due to a number of reasons, including job losses in the service and retail sectors where women tend to work.
In our next story, Moroccan police intervene as football supporters clash after match. Moroccan police was forced to intervene on Sunday after supporters of football club AS Farah invaded the pitch to face supporters of Maghreb Fez. The violence followed AS Farah's defeat 2-0 in a Throne Cup match held at Rabat. The police arrested around 160 people, some of whom were carrying knives and stones. More than 100 policemen were also injured. Amongst the supporters arrested by the police were 90 minors. The authorities reported at least 57 injured among the supporters. The incidents are the first since the return of the public to the stadiums at the end of February after a 2-year closure due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Now, Mali bans civilians from border area in Mauritania tensions. Now, Mali says it has banned civilians from a border area where the disappearance of citizens from Mauritania, blamed by social media on Malian troops, has stoked tensions between the two neighbors. Now, in a statement late Sunday issued after Mali dispatched envoys to Mauritania, government spokesperson Colonel Abdoulaye Magai announced the military authorities have decided to strictly forbid any movement by civilians in the Ouagadougou forest and the Gringle forest zones. Now, Mauritania's government has accused the army of recurring criminal acts, but not given further details. Now, a high-level Malian delegation was in Nouakchott, the Mauritanian capital, on Friday Friday and Saturday in a bid to ease friction. Now, the two sides agreed to set up a joint investigation into the disappearances and set up joint patrols in the border area. Now, Maiga, in his statement, said the Ouagadougou and Gringel zones lay in an area where the Malian military had been conducting anti-jihadist operations since December, but reiterating Mali's previous position. Maiga said that the army had nothing to do with the disappearances.
All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, as I mentioned earlier, yesterday, Namibia, like other countries, announced major relaxations with regards to their COVID-19 regulations. So we'll be dissecting and breaking that down with the editor of the Republican, which is the Afrikaans Daily, Danny Boysen, just after the break. Stay with us.
Want to do one.
So yesterday, Namibia, like many other countries, announced some major relaxations with regards to COVID-19 regulations. Now, Danny Boysen, who is the editor of the Afrikaans Daily Republican, and he has regularly visited us before to discuss comparative data for countries in Southern Africa and elsewhere on the continent. He's here to talk about the Namibian situation. How do you feel, Danny?
Thanks for having me again. It's always great to be on Africa Good Morning. Just first of all, to summarize some of the important changes in Namibia, I think masks, we don't have to compulsory wear masks in public places anymore. That is from tomorrow. Public gatherings is now 1,000 people that's allowed to gather. So I think in the entertainment industry, for example, events concerning people will be very positive about that. And in terms of tourism, everyone visiting Namibia now that can prove they are fully vaccinated don't have to show a negative test result anymore. So tourism, the industry is also very positive about the changes.
You don't feel it's too soon?
I think what informs this is the data. That's why I brought along some slides. So let's start with the first slide. So first, to just give recognition for the source of this. So the data you're seeing is from Our World in Data. You can see their logo on top there. That is done by Oxford, and epidemiological data here is from Johns Hopkins University. So I've chosen there, Ashwin, 4 African countries. So it's South Africa, Namibia, Kenya, and Nigeria. And this actually shows you new confirmed cases per million people. And we see the previous 4 waves there. So we post 4th wave in Africa. Some countries differ a bit from this picture, but this is mostly, you will see the same picture. And Namibia is the green line. So you will actually see our 3rd wave. We were right on top there with almost 700 cases in a million per day. So that was way more than 1,400 at its worth. We just going to the next one, because I've added another country here from North Africa. So you see Tunisia there is the red line. So obviously, because they're in the northern hemisphere, it's a bit different because of the seasons. So you'll see there that quite recently Tunisia actually had more cases than Namibia during our 3rd wave. So I think just coming back to that, Ashwin, people are talking about the fifth wave already. There are predictions that we'll see that quite soon, because winter is nearing. We're going into fall now, and we've seen in European countries and others a fifth wave. Hong Kong now, it's especially a hot spot. They're reporting a lot about these extremely harsh restrictions now again. In Hong Kong, for example, you asked me, is it too soon? I think time will bear that out, but I think the data is showing that our government has decided, transmission is very little now. We are in Namibia now less than 10 cases a day on average.
Yes, I am inclined to ask, were masks that much of an inconvenience though?
I think if you look around you, I think people are getting a bit tired of it. You see less people wearing it. I think, I think to protect yourself, obviously, I think a lot of people will still wear a mask when they go into a shop, for example, etc. But I think the important thing is to protect yourself, and vaccination still remains important. We're going to look at that in a little while, but let's just look at the fatalities also. We're looking again at the same African countries in this slide. So we see very much the same picture here. Namibia, again, there you see the green line, Ashwin, standing out completely during the third wave. So we had about... We had double Namibia's normal death rate per day during the third wave. So you will remember our hospitals, mortuaries, etc. were completely overwhelmed. And at the end now, where we stand now, you will see very few fatalities recorded at the moment. And that is why we have the relaxations as well. We spoke about vaccination. So let's quickly now look at the same countries. It's the five now. So there is North Africa. So you'll see Tunisia, they've actually more than 50% of people in Tunisia has been vaccinated fully. South Africa is close to 30%. You'll see Namibia and Kenya. I chose Kenya to represent Eastern Africa. Close together at about 15%. And Nigeria, I chose for West Africa. You see they below 5% still in terms of fully vaccinated people. And the next one, I see this now compares cases to the vaccination rates. And quite interesting here is that the more people are vaccinated, you see less cases. So people will say this is not necessarily, obviously, Ashwin, a direct correlating factor, but the data, I think, is quite clear. But there's a lot of, I think, factors. We know Delta was a very virulent variant that spread very fast and was very severe. Omicron, I think we know the world had a bit of went into a panic unnecessarily, banning Southern Africa from traveling, etc. And in the end, it wasn't a very severe sickness that people experienced. So the fourth wave was much lower than what we saw previous. But I think this we'll have to see what happens, obviously. So I think I don't think people necessarily have to be fearful. But I think if we keep doing what is important in protecting ourselves, I think the winter will be manageable. But obviously, winter is flu time, so we will see more cases. I think that is basically a fact.
And of course, it's a matter of knowing whether or not the government is prepared for that. And I'm sure they considered that prior to relaxing the regulations. Thank you very much, Danny, for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so I've just been talking to Danny Boysen, who is the editor of the Afrikaans Daily Republican, and we're looking at comparative data, especially considering yesterday's relaxation of COVID-19 regulations, which includes no mask wearing not mandatory, rather, and 1,000 people are allowed to gather now. Interesting times indeed. This is still Africa Good Morning. After the break, we'll be crossing over to South Africa and having a chat with Ari.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Now we head on over to South Africa, speaking to our correspondent, Ari Hogat. Good morning, Ari.
Yes, very good morning to all. Nice to talk on this Wednesday morning. Lovely day here.
Awesome. Now, in your first story, the Department of Mineral Resources have told MPs in Parliament in a briefing session that rationing of fuel might be needed in South Africa if the conflict in Ukraine continues beyond April.
Yes, Glenora, that's a word that we didn't think that we're going to hear is the rationing of fuel. Obviously, the unrest is a challenge, or the situation in Ukraine is a challenge for world over. Fuel prices in South Africa is a challenge. They're talking about in April it might be 23 rand and 87 cents, so that's quite a high one they estimate. Government is making some plans to see if they can cut the price or give some money back to the people buying the petrol, so to speak. But at the moment, the challenge is that it might be because of the oil price. Obviously, that is at the moment $103 US, but it might go higher. And then rationing of fuel might be a possibility. It was mentioned in Parliament in the briefing, and one suggestion was that if it does happen, the first phase will be for people just to be allowed to put in 50 liters of petrol at a time. So it's not happening at the moment. They just mentioned that, so they have to look what happens in Ukraine.
All right. Now, the government announced that the national state of emergency in South Africa related to the risk of COVID-19 has been extended to 15 April 2022. Tell us more, Ari.
Yes, it's been extended for another month. I just listened in when Danny Boysen gave a quite comprehensive report on what's happening in Africa. It is in South Africa at the moment, it's 671 cases per day. So it's not as high as when it was 5, 7, and 10,000 a day at some peak times. Everybody's fearing there might be a fifth wave. I don't know how they predict that. It might be related to the weather, I suppose, in winter. But for the last 24 hours, there was no deaths. That is great to hear. I haven't heard that for quite a while. So we still have to wear masks in South Africa, not as in Namibia. It wasn't changed. But the state of emergency has been extended. The reason given is that the government say that they need more time to evaluate existing legislation and also continuation plans. So they need more time to plan, obviously, for what's happening in future. But yes, at the moment, it's still a state of emergency in South Africa, and we'll assess it month by month at the moment.
Interesting times. Now, I understand that the South African Airways have announced that they will use bigger planes on domestic routes to cater for increased demand after the groundings of Kululu.com and British Airways. Can you tell us more?
Yes, it's built around supply and demand, and that is because of Comair that operates Kulula and British Airways. They've been grounded by the authorities, and that was not good to see. Obviously, lots of challenges in the airline business at the moment, but the civil aviation authorities have grounded Kulula and British Airways, they say, indefinitely. So that's a big word. They were hoping, Comair was hoping it will be lifted by Sunday after 24 hours, but it didn't happen. So at the moment, SAA offering bigger aeroplanes. They do have quite a few that normally fly more international, so they can accommodate that. The SAA also promised not to hike the prices. So that is difficult because 40% of the seat capacity was lost between Kulula and British Airways. So there's a high demand and offerings are few. So you would expect the price to go up. So hopefully Comair can be in the air sooner than later.
All right. Now, the Springboks have got 6 matches this year, and the South African Rugby has already started selling tickets to full capacity. So this is for full capacity stadiums. However, the legislation is only allowing 2,000 spectators per event. Do they know something we don't?
Yes, they've been brave. That is the word. Rugby players tend to be a bit more brave. But the word they used is bullishly. The bullishly sounds like a strong word, but it's anticipating. Maybe that's the right word. Hoping that it will be changed in a few months' time. Those games are only in winter time. That is the Cape Town Stadium. I've been at that stadium a few weeks ago when the Stormers played the Sharks in the United Rugby Championship. There were 2,000 people, so you can imagine 2,000 people scattered in that stadium. It's actually comical. and then everybody goes across to the waterfront just next door and be shoulder to shoulder in restaurants and walking around. So it's not consistent. But at the moment they sold the tickets. It's for six games, and hoping, that's probably the word, that legislation will change, that it's not 2,000 spectators anymore, that it will be full capacity. I suppose if it doesn't change, they can just say to the people, sorry, you can't come anymore. We'll give you the money back.
They should.
Now, in your feel-good story, I'm quite excited about it because I'm also a volunteer at the SPCA. I understand that more than 60,000 rand has been raised for the Animal Rescue Center at SPCA at this past weekend's Cape Town cycle tour.
Yes, a great event. I was, yes, 260,000 rand raised, 71 riders, brilliant initiative. They've got a 24/7 service, looking after 600 animals daily. Great job they're doing. Well done. Glad they did that, and a great event on Sunday.
Hey, as an animal lover myself, I'm certainly happy to hear that. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the news from South Africa.
Big pleasure, and a brilliant day to everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers. We were just talking to Ari as he was giving us the updates in South Africa. Let's have a look at your weather before we cross over to Mike Sichula in Zambia. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's cross over to Mike Sichula in Zambia. Good morning, Mike. Ulibanji.
Tiribuino Mulibwanji, Africa, good morning.
Bueno, indeed. Now, 30 opposition members of parliament have been suspended for 30 days for breach of parliamentary privileges. Obviously, this is the new opposition. Is this residual habit from when they were in the administration, when they were leading the administration? Tell us about that, Mike.
Yes, indeed, like you've said, the 30 members of parliament that have been suspended for 30 days are actually from the new opposition party, that is the Patriotic Front, who 6 months, at least 6 months ago, were in power. So what happened is that in November 2021, there was a debate before the floor of the House concerning the budget for State House. Now, during the time the Minister of Finance was presenting this budget, there was an error that was noticed by the opposition members of parliament. And through their leader of opposition, they raised a point of order, which the speaker acknowledged, and they did indeed say that there was an error that was committed, because the Minister of Finance, when debating the budget for the parliament, for the State House, they were using articles drawn from the 1996 Constitution, which was actually out of order, because Zambia has transitioned from 1996 Constitution to 2021 Constitution. So this actually was rectified But despite that, there was another incident where these members of parliament they protested the removal from parliament of 9 of their members of parliament on account that their seats were nullified by the High Court due to irregularities here and there. So these two occurrences are the things that have forced the Deputy Speaker of National Assembly to actually suspend the members of parliament for the next 30 days. They did protest yesterday, but from the look of things, the members of parliament are vowed to take legal action against the Deputy Speaker of National Assembly because they believe the action that was taken by the Deputy Speaker was in breach of constitutional standing of special privileges under the floor of the House.
All right. Now, water levels have started reducing in the man-made Kariba Dam shared between Zambia and Zimbabwe. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, the Kariba Dam, as we all know, is a shared dam, man-made dam between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And for Zambia, it is the major contributor in terms of electricity generation. Over 80% of power that is used in Zambia is generated through the Kariba Dam and other power plants that have been set up. So the Minister of Energy has come has told the nation that water levels in the dam have started reducing. And the Zambezi River Authority also attributes this reduction to rainfall activities on and around the reservoir. They are saying water around the reservoir, the rainfall pattern has not been that much to warrant more water levels in the dam. So this state of affairs, according to the minister, is likely to lead to reduced electricity generation. And according to them, they are saying this is not going to be good for economic development because once power will begin to be rationed, it is not going to be good. And as you can see, it is happening even way before the rain season ends. So meaning by the end of close to October, the water levels could have actually reduced further, and electricity trading is going to be high, which is not good for economic development. However, the minister is anticipating that water from the southern part of Zambia during the Omboka ceremony, where the water is likely to be high on the higher side, is likely to contribute to help the dam have at least more water as not something that is not going to be worrying to members of the general public.
All right. Now, of course, that is a worrisome situation, and we hope it can be sorted out soon. But I am proposing that Zambia lets superstar striker Patson Daka walk right across that bridge to Zimbabwe, and maybe it might change our situation. I'm no scientist, but we'll think about it. Now, moving on to the next story, Zambia will start conducting kidney transplant surgeries before the end of June 2022. That sounds like good news, Mike.
Yeah, yes, indeed. This is good news in the medical industry as well as tourism, medical tourism. As you may not be aware, Zambia spends, the Ministry of Health spends about $13,000 if they have to transport one kidney patient outside to seek medical attention. So this amount is quite colossal on the Ministry of Health because it is not receiving adequate budgetary allocation. Hence, the decision by the Ministry of Health to work with other cooperating partners, and they have finally concluded that come the end of June 2022, Zambia is going to start conducting its own kidney transplant surgeries, and this has excited the Kidney Foundation of Zambia that has been calling on government to ensure that kidney consumable products are made available not only at one medical center, but across different health institutions in Zambia so that more people can begin to access these facilities. And the Minister of Health is very confident that this is going to happen and is excited, and the Kidney Foundation is very excited.
All right.
All right, that sounds like really, really exciting news.
Indeed.
Now, in your next story, Mike, I understand that tributes continue to pour in for the late President Rupiah Banda, with the Queen Elizabeth describing Mr. Banda as an advocate for peace, reconciliation, and democracy. Can you tell us more?
As briefly as you can, Mike.
Yes, indeed. The tributes have continued, and well, like you've said, the Queen Elizabeth has paid tribute to the late Rupiah Banda through President Hakainde Hichilema and the family. And a lot more other African leaders have continued to pay tribute to late President Rupiah Banda. We have received tribute from South Africa. We have received tribute from Namibia. We have received tribute from Kenya and a lot more other countries. And the burial is actually set for the 18th of March 2022, and on 17th March 2022, there will be a state funeral where high-profile people are going to attend this funeral. So this is what has been going on in terms of mourning President Rupiah Banda.
A true icon indeed. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news stories from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning. Do have a blessed week. Thank you.
All right. Now, after the break, Nigeria banks suspend card withdrawals abroad. That's going to be in your economic news. Stay with us.
Choose your flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in 1 bundle. It's new, it's 1 bill, and you can stay connected in more than 1 location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.
Always prepared. Paratus.
You are still with Africa. Good morning, and these are your economic news stories. Nigerian banks suspend card withdrawals abroad. Nigerian banks have suspended individual withdrawals with local debit cards abroad and toughened limits on online payments. Commercial banks had been limiting the amount individuals can withdraw with their debit cards while abroad to ease foreign currency settlement risk with the country facing dollar shortages. Now, oil prices have since recovered and soared, but a backlog demand for foreign exchange has dodged currency markets and the Naira. Stanbic Bank said it would cut limits for online purchases and payments by half to $50 from Monday in response to economic realities and suspend cash withdrawals.
Now, in our next story, Algeria bans export of food. Now, Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune ordered on Sunday the banning of exports of all consumer products that Algeria imports, such as sugar, pasta, oil, semolina, and all wheat derivatives. Now, the announcement followed a meeting of the Council of Ministers. Now, the presidential decision means that not only Algerian economic operators are not allowed to export food products made from imported raw materials, but also they risk legal action in case of infringement.
Swinging over to Malawi, Chakwera launches $3 million groundnuts factory. President Lazarus Chakwera on Monday launched the second largest groundnuts factory in Africa. The factory, owned by Pyxis Agriculture Limited, is projected to employ 2,000 people. The president hailed the investment, indicating the need for a multi-sectoral approach to job creation. Chakwera said he has already unveiled a 5-point presidential initiative on job creation. All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Now, I'm sure you've heard of a jack of all trades, but have you heard of a jack of all screens? Ari Hogard was giving us news from South Africa just now, and right now he's going to give us our sports news update. Have a look.
Good day, everyone. It's time for international sports news, and we start off with the World Cup cricket that's taking place in New Zealand at the moment. It's the Women's 50-over World Cup, and one result, the latest result, is Australia that played against the West Indies, and Australia just had a comfortable win. It was a win by 7 wickets against the West Indies, and Australia is now unbeaten after 4 games in the tournament. What happened in the game was that the West Indies batted first. They made 131 all out, not a very high score. And then Australia batted down the runs in just in the 20th over. And they made 132 for the loss of only 3 wickets. The best batsman for Australia was Rachel Haynes, and she scored 83 runs, unbeaten. Next game's coming up, 2 very important games for all the teams, for the 4 teams playing. It is England that will play India. England have lost all 3 of their games so far. They're defending champions, so they definitely need to beat India if they want to stay in contention. If they lose against India, they're definitely out of the tournament. Just 4 of the 8 teams go through to the semi-finals. Also, South Africa play New Zealand in a midweek game, and South Africa have won their first 3 games, and New Zealand lost the opening game against the West Indies, and also lost against Australia. So a very important 2 games coming up. That is England against India, and then also South Africa playing the host New Zealand. Now we continue with soccer news on the international sport. And that is from the English Premier League, and the big game that was played, it's the big game because it's the log leaders Manchester City that played against Crystal Palace at Crystal Palace, and Manchester City dropped points. The game ended in a 0-all draw, so that is good news for Liverpool that is chasing them on the log. At the moment, Manchester City is still leading. They've got 70 points after 29 games, and Liverpool after 28 games, they have 66 points. So if Liverpool can win their next game, they will be within 1 point of Manchester City. But the next game for Liverpool is quite a difficult one. It is also a midweek game. It's going to be against Arsenal, and that game is being played at Arsenal. So Arsenal also fighting to stay in the top 4. They've been playing well the last 3-4 games. They've won all their games, and Arsenal at the moment, they on 4th on the log, 51 points after 26 games. Manchester United is in 5th position. They've got 50 points after 29 games, and then in 3rd position it is Chelsea. At the moment they've got 59 points after 28 games. And now for golf news. It was the Players' Championship on the PGA Tour that was played in Florida that went into day 5, and the winner there in the end was Cameron Smith of Australia. Big win for him. It's the biggest prize money in the PGA on the PGA Tour. It is $3.6 million for the winner. So it's a big check for Cameron Smith of Australia. He finished with 6 under par 66, and that was for a total of -13. That was a rain delay tournament. That's why it went into day 5. And just 1 shot behind him in 2nd place was a great performance by India's, that is Arniban Lahiri of India. He finished on -12, and then just 1 shot behind him in 3rd position, Paul Casey of England on -11. World number 1, John Ram, didn't have a great tournament. He battled in the last round. He finished with a +5 round, 5 over par in the 4th round, his final round, and he finished tied 55th on +2 total for the 4 rounds. And now to conclude international sporting news, it is tennis news from the Indian Wells Masters that's taking place in California. And in the men's section, it was lots of the highest seeds men's players that was knocked out in the round of 32. And the significant one will be Daniel Medvedev, the number 1 seed. He lost against Gilles Monfils of France. So that was in 3 sets. He lost 6-1 in the 3rd set. And Daniel Medvedev will also lose his number 1 ranking in the world because of that. And it's again Novak Djokovic that will be number 1 in the world. Other seeds that top seeds that fell out is number 5th seed, that is Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece. He lost to Jensen Brooksley of the USA, a 21-year-old upcoming talent from the USA. He lost in 3 sets, 6-2 in the 3rd, and also earlier Alexander Zverev of Germany also fell in the earlier rounds, and he fell to Tommy Paul of the United States. The 2 top seeds that's still in the tournament at the moment is Rafael Nadal. He's through to the next round, and also Andrei Rublev. He is also through to the next round. In the women's draw, it is defending champion, that is Paula Badosa of Spain, and she played against a good friend also from Spain, that is Sara Torno, and she beat her in 2 sets, 7-6 and 6-1. And also through Leila Fernandez of Canada, she had a tough game in 3 sets against Shelley Rogers of the USA, winning 6-3 in the 3rd set. So that's all the sports news, international sports news for now. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Many thanks to Ari for that comprehensive sports package. Now let's get into today's highlights as we end the show. Kenya, 98-year-old primary school student Priscilla Sitine becomes a role model. Former Boko Haram militants to be reintegrated into society. ICC says Central African Republic war crime suspect surrendered. 13 soldiers killed in an ambush in Burkina Faso. Nigerian banks suspend card withdrawals abroad. Those have been our stories.
And with that, we've come at the end of our show. Now, do remember that Africa Good Morning is repeated on our OneUp2 website and on our DSTV channel 285 and our GoTV channel 94 between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. every weekday. Now, if you have any comments regarding our show, do share them with us on our Facebook and Twitter pages. And if you happen to have videos or happenings from your parts of Africa, do share them with us and we'll gladly include them in our program. Now, I am Glenora Shipura.
And I am Ashwin Berry. Sweraj Kanaka.